Hello. Today we're going to be talking about Subspace Emissary, the single-player mode of Super Smash Bros. Brawl for the Nintendo Wii. I got a lot of history with this mode. It was the motivating factor for me picking up the game. I obviously knew of Smash Bros. Melee at the time, and enjoyed that quite a lot. Hadn't heard too much about this Brawl game. I was over at someone else's place who had the game and played through the start of Subspace there, and I was so blown away by Subspace that it became my most wanted game at the time. And I did, of course, pick it up. Also the stage builder mode, that was a pretty big selling point. But yeah, I was just very impressed by the scale of this story and had to see what happened next. I've played through Subspace a lot of times, but it has been a few years since I went back to it. The timing felt right because I'd played modes which reminded me of that pretty recently, what with Kirby Air Riders Road Trip mode. And then we also have World of Light with Smash Ultimate, which to me does feel like a lesser effort version of Subspace that is there to fill up some playtime and give you some single player content for that game, but does not offer the same scope of storytelling that Subspace did back in 2008. We're talking about the story, by the way. This is a story category. I don't know if I said that. One thing I really like is the split paths you get at the start of the game. For one, you can battle Kirby as Mario or Mario as Kirby. These two guys are kind of our dual protagonists, which is pretty great. I think that works quite well. I really enjoy their characterization. Mario's a little tougher than sometimes we see him, but still very likable. Kirby is just Kirby, and that does work. We also get the integration of Princess Zelda and Princess Peach in this opening segment, and the cage you break determines which princess escapes, which affects the story a little bit later. That's mostly the extent of it. There's not too much else, but having that in the game is not a bad thing, and I think is fun, and gives you just a little bit of a reason to replay through the mode if you want to see all the different variations of the cutscenes. The characterization in this game is just so consistently great. I think it does an amazing job of representing such a wide array of characters and personalities from so many different varieties of games. Some other standouts are Wario. He's actually quite evil in this game, which is refreshing. He's sort of in the comic relief zone at points, but more or less he's kind of just a real bastard, real son of a bitch, which is a fun direction for the character Wario. It's quite unexpected. I played this game when I was pretty young. I found him fairly frightening. It's weird for Wario, but it does work for the story. One of the best odd couple friendships in the game is Diddy Kong and Fox. They team up pretty early on to take down Rayquaza and then have little adventures together. Fox is the straight man with Diddy Kong providing the comic relief. It's just a really great, fun dynamic that you're obviously not able to see in any other context other than Super Smash Bros. I really enjoy the format of having these disparate groups of characters crossing over with each other, going on their quests, and then them all coalescing into the big final battle. I think that is the perfect way of doing it, having the different groups, Diddy Kong and Fox, Mario and Pit, Link and Yoshi, Meta Knight and the Fire Emblem characters is a really fun idea, and then they gradually meet together. Kirby joins Mario and Pit and Link and Yoshi, and they have a little showdown before officially joining forces because there's a misunderstanding. You know, it's a fun excuse to get the characters to fight before they team up. The visuals of this game hold up surprisingly well. The art style is of its time, but still charming. They make the characters and environments look a little desaturated and dark in tone. It has a certain appeal to it, I'll say. They created original enemies in large part. They're a bit generic, but I don't really care that much. I think it works fine. One inclusion I wanted to shout out in particular is that of Lucas, who's kind of one of the main characters of the game. Pretty bizarre. At the time, of course, Mother 3 was Japan exclusive, as it still is. Lovely. But you know, that's a character that large swaths of the world just are not going to know from his game of origin. And yet, he is a central character in this story. So you meet him in the abandoned zoo. He teams up with Ness. Ness is someone who he looks up to, but Ness gets taken out by Wario. So then Wario sort of becomes the central villain of Lucas's story, and he then teams up with Pokemon Trainer and learns to be more confident in himself. It's a pretty substantial part of the game. You get Mother 3 elements like the Porky statue, and then you get Porky as a boss. But it is strange for this game to have such a Mother 3 focus when we know what happened with that. It is kind of frustrating in a certain sense, Mother 3 character as one of the main characters of the story mode, but you know, if you're outside of Japan, you're SOL on actually playing the damn game it came from.
How the fuck would you show me something if I couldn't have it?
You know, even if Nintendo announced tomorrow that Mother 3 is shadow dropping on the Switch and Switch 2 or whatever, that still really wouldn't make up for the, what is it, like 2 decades or so now that it has not been officially available. That just, I don't know, that pisses me off a lot. It almost feels too late for them to release Mother 3. I mean, I'd still play it if they did do an official release, but Christ. Seeing Lucas here and having such a central role did kind of exacerbate that frustration. Though it was great to see him, I mean, it's a really cool, but it's also slightly surreal. When the subspace bomb goes off here, I thought Wario just fucking died. I guess he managed to live through that experience. Making Rob the Robot a tragic villain in the Subspace Emissary is kind of a stroke of genius. I really respect that. The character of the Ancient Minister is hilarious, but you know, it's also very effective. I really can't handle sad robots, and the use of Rob here really exploits that. They're kind of suicidal because by setting off the bombs, they kill themselves. They're like one of the few characters that I guess canonically probably die because you see them being torn apart as the subspace bombs go off. Whereas the other characters get turned into trophies, which, you know, they can be revived. They're not actually dead. But no, the Robs are just dead. It's a little sad, man. That scene with the Ancient Minister where you find out he's Rob is just such an amazing cutscene, very well executed sequence, and you get all the characters trying to stop the Robs from killing themselves, but they just won't do it. We do know that they're sentient because they interact with the Ancient Minister, they wave goodbye. It's a little bit tragic. There's one of the best integrations of King Dedede ever. I love the way he's used here. He's introduced as a sort of a comic relief villain, but as is often the case, there is more to the story with King Dedede. As it turns out, he has a technology which can revive the Smash Fighters after they have been defeated and turned into trophies. Getting to the end of the story, the game gets a little bit more hardcore. Master Hand gets some bloody wounds as he disconnects himself from Taboo's strings. They're doing their job earning that T rating. So yeah, the game ends with our characters all teaming up, going into subspace and facing off against Taboo, who at that point just uses his epic wing attack and turns everyone into trophies. And so this is where I have a little bit of additional context from my original playthrough. I thought the game was over here. I thought that was the end. I guess all the characters are just in stasis as trophies and no one else is going to turn them back. So where else could the story possibly go? Put the game down. I don't really remember how long it was till I went back and discovered that there was in fact more to the story, but that's just always a memory I'll have. It's kind of funny to think in retrospect that as a child I assumed Nintendo would have it in them to end their crossover game on such a sour note. As it turns out, that was not in fact the case. You get a whole long section after that in which the characters that have the King Dedede badges are revived and go through subspace back to where Taboo has formed the Great Maze. And then you got the Great Maze, which is a weird thing. I think putting this at the end of the game might have been, yeah, maybe a little bit of a mistake. It does slow the pacing down by a lot. That's probably my biggest issue with this mode is the pacing does slow down quite a lot near the end of the game, and that gets exacerbated by the Great Maze, which isn't that long. It's shorter than I remember it being. Essentially, you are going through the previous level sections, which have been sort of retrofitted into a Metroidvania format. The goal is to defeat shadow versions of every fighter, and once you do that, you unlock the final boss versus Taboo. It's pretty resourceful to go back and use these old level elements in the form of a Metroidvania. In a different context, I think it would have worked better, but having it be right before the final boss does feel like padding. I don't know how better you could have formatted it, maybe as a post-game bonus, but then you don't really have the motivation to get through it. I don't know. I'm not sure what the solution would have been, but the overall experience would probably be better if you just cut that or made it significantly shorter. It's probably about the length of 4 or 5 of the regular stages. And then we get a funny kind of character reveal right before Taboo, which is of course Sonic the Hedgehog, who I guess was added late in development, so didn't have much of a prominent role in the story, but they managed to fit him in right before the end. Good to see you, Sonic.
Thanks, I appreciate it.
Okay, that's the bulk of the story. I'll do a summary of my final thoughts at the end of the video. Before that, let's just touch on some gameplay details. Subspace is basically a fun beat-em-up platformer. It's a little bit sluggish, which is in large part a byproduct of Brawl being sluggish as a game. It's just a lot slower than the other Smash Bros. Games, unfortunately. Not something I love going back to in terms of the pace of character movement. Tripping is really funny. You just can trip randomly, and this can also happen in Subspace. Do I have to explain why that's not the best thing ever? I'd probably not. I think the pacing of the gameplay is really great for the majority of the game. It's doling out cutscenes and new characters at a pretty rapid rate for most of it. I learned this on this playthrough after, I don't know, however many before, but these stickers you collect, you know, the little PNG images, you can actually equip them and they give you stat boosts, some of which are pretty useful. I didn't know you could do that. I think maybe I'd read it at some point, but I had not ever done it myself. It was helpful, you know, I gave Kirby some knockback resistance. I do like that the part of the game with Samus and Pikachu teaming up incorporates Metroidvania elements. And like I said, the Great Maze is a bit of a pacing killer. Not my favorite thing ever, but I did enjoy going through it. I wish they had found a way of making it feel a little bit more natural and less like padding. And Taboo is a fun final boss. I like fighting him. He's reasonably difficult. Played the game on hard mode, which was fine, not too bad. It had a little bit of teeth to it. The bosses in general are quite good. A lot of them are original, and those original bosses are a little bit more forgettable, but you do also have some crossover bosses like Rayquaza, who is a highlight. Stuff like that is quite fun. I really loved going back to Subspace. It was quite refreshing. It's short, but you get a fun story in there and all these great crossover elements. It's interesting to look back on now that we have stuff like the Mario movie and other film and TV initiatives that are exponentially more commonplace now than in the 2000s.
What's crazy is I think Subspace compares favorably to things like the Mario movie or even the new Pikmin shorts. It really does hold up on a cinematic level, which is kind of crazy.
It has just enough depth to be engaging throughout and utilizes the concept of a huge crossover to its advantage. The scale of the story feels huge, even though it is essentially just a side mode for a party game. That's pretty impressive, I'd say. The end credits featuring the Latin lyrics on screen, that's a really great finale section to finally get some context to the words that are being spoken in Latin. That goes a long way to sell the scope of the story. Just having such a big sounding track with full orchestra and choir there. We really do need more Latin chorus music in Nintendo games, I'd say. I think that's something we're lacking. The World of Light theme for Smash Ultimate is like, it's fine. It's like the English lyrics, it's not as cool as Latin though, right? I mean, let's be real. I mean, it's freaking Latin. Come on. All right, in summation though, here we are, our final point. It holds up. I love this mode. Going back to it was an amazing time. So yeah, shout out to Subspace Emissary if you still got a copy of Brawl. You know, it's worth a revisit. There's not really been anything else exactly like it before or since. You had adventure mode on Melee, but it's like, it's fine, but it's pretty limited. You can see some of its DNA in Kid Icarus Uprising and Kirby Air Riders Road Trip mode. Those are obviously quite different. World of Light from Smash Ultimate feels like a much pared back version of Subspace and does not hit the same. That's the fact of the matter. Thank you for coming to my video, and I will see you again one day soon.